Hello, everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining us today. Before we get started with the webinar, we wanted to remind you that registration is required to complete your attendance quiz at the end of today's session and to be eligible for a digital badge. You only need to register for the series one time, so if you have already registered— Hello, everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining us today. You only need to register for the series one time, so if you have already registered for series 24, no further action is needed. For those who have not yet registered, you can do so by using the link provided in the chat box and then following the steps listed on the slide. Today's webinar will begin in just a couple of minutes. Thanks for being here, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second session in American English Live Series 24. We're so excited that each of you are here with us today. My name is Kate, and I'll be with you today along with my colleague behind the scenes, Javid, who will be the moderator helping answer your questions and responding to your comments during the session. We wanted to let you know that today's session will be recorded and shared across various platforms. By attending and adding your comments to the chat section during today's webinar, your first name, country, and/or comment may be included in the video recording. By participating, you consent to your appearance in the recording and its use for purposes related to the work or business of FHI 360 and the U.S. Department of State. If you do not want to appear in the recording, please do not share any comments in the chat box during the live webinar. Throughout Series 24, we are exploring a variety of topics related to teaching English through American media, games, and creative activities in celebration of the United States' 250th birthday. We hope you're able to use the practical ideas we share. Here's what to expect today. The session is about 60 minutes long. The presenter will present the material, and I, as your host, will ask questions and make comments too. But we really hope to hear from you, our audience, so that we can address your ideas and experiences. So please share your thoughts using the chat box. And now for today's webinar, Photography as Art and Media, Lenses into American Language and Culture. This interactive webinar will demonstrate how photography offers teachers a flexible, engaging way to enrich English instruction by sparking vocabulary growth, critical thinking, and meaningful discussions of U.S. themes such as progress, nature, and innovation. We'll explore free photo archives and classroom-ready activities that build visual literacy and identify ways to customize photo-based lessons for different contexts. By the end of the session, participants will walk away with student-centered techniques that bring language to life through visual storytelling. And now we're pleased to introduce our presenters, Conan Kmiecik and David Bartsch. Conan is an English lecturer and course lead at Qatar University. He is an experienced university lecturer with a background in teaching ESL, EFL, English composition, literature, and entrepreneurial education. In 2025, he served as a U.S. Department of State English language specialist and completed a project at the language village of Mahida in Tunisia. David has been an English lecturer at Qatar University since 2007. He earned his Matisel degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in the United States. In addition to teaching English for academic purposes, English for specific purposes, and 4 skills courses in blended, task-based, and traditional formats, he has worked extensively with computer-assisted language learning, or CAL. Welcome, Conan and David. We're so happy to have you here with us today.
Good afternoon, everyone, and greetings from Qatar. My name is Conan Kmiecik, and I'm originally from Wisconsin. That's a state in the northern part of the United States. I've been living and working here in Doha now for about 10 years, and I'm excited to be here.
My name is David Bartsch, and I'm originally from Iowa, a rural state in the central part of the U.S. I've been living and working in Doha for almost 20 years now, and I'm excited to be here as well.
Dave and I teach English and practice photography as a shared hobby. Today, we hope to show you why photographs deserve a renewed place in English language classroom. Okay, so in today's webinar, we will explore how visual literacy can be developed through photography, practice activities that build visual literacy and language skills, and consider how to adapt photos-based tasks for different teaching contexts. We have lots of information that we've shared. However, time for the webinar is limited. So we've included several deeper dives for you to follow up on after the presentation.
So as we get started, think to yourself, have you ever used photography in your English language teaching before? I was just looking at the AE website on Facebook, and some of you have had some nice interactions on there already. So Kate, what are you seeing from the participants? How have they used photography?
Yeah, let us know, everybody. How have you used photography in your classrooms? Let's see. And thanks for all the hellos from people. I'm really happy to be back here hosting webinars. Let's see, to introduce a new topic. Wonderful. What are some other ways that would describe, or 3 words that would describe your experience using photography in the classroom? What do you have for us today? Let's see. Aha from Moscow says that she uses photography quite often. Let's see. Photographer is one of the best ways to teach students. It's a wonderful, you use it almost as a dictionary, like a picture dictionary. Exciting, interesting, and mind-blowing from Mona Lisa Das.
Wow.
Wonderful. To create stories from Delia. For creating stories in different ways. Memory keeping, I love that. I use photography to explain meaning, interact in a fun way, and educate students about vocabulary from Finn. Motivating, challenging, and critical thinking use from Maria Teresa. Amazing, wonderful, and easy to understand from Lynn.
Okay.
Creative, funny, and inspiring from Raquel. And we'll do one more. Let's see here. Stimulate brainstorming schemata. Woo, that was a good one. All right. Thanks, everyone, for those wonderful comments.
Okay. Thank you everyone. Okay. So nowadays, all around the world, we live in a media-rich environment. This includes traditional media like books, newspapers, television, and movies, as well as digital media such as the internet, social media, and podcasts. Photography is a medium that exists in both the traditional analog and the contemporary digital format. As Goldstein reminds us, all media needs to be interpreted critically and creatively. The interpretation of images, including photography, is known as visual literacy. Okay. Just as we live in a multimedia world, we need to possess multiple literacies to interpret the many messages that we encounter every day. This is especially important in the current digital age, as literacies constantly overlap and evolve. The webinar in itself is a multimodal text. You are engaging with the spoken word as I speak, language on the screen, images as well, and video of Dave and me talking. Your minds are processing all these inputs at the same time. Okay. With the advent of smartphones, consumers now have technology with more computing power than the computers used during the 1960s lunar landings. These devices continue to grow more powerful each year and have allowed users to become more than passive media consumers. Today, almost everyone can act as a content creator with the camera built on their phone. This contributes to the ever-growing online media landscape.
So we wanted to introduce you to something you might not have heard of. We think it's very useful, not just for the subject of our presentation today with photography, but this is actually really useful for lots of different ways of interacting and thinking about your English teaching in the ESL classroom. It's called Bloom's taxonomy. We'll connect it to visual literacy here in a moment. It moves from lower level vocabulary and cognitive processes to more complicated aspects of critical thinking and which require lower frequency vocabulary. So we've included some representative verbs for each level. So at the bottom we have, so the basic idea is remember, and so we'll highlight and define. And then as we move up, we've got understand, so summarize. So then we're starting to get a little bit more complicated. Apply, so verbs like choose and examine, and these are all words that you can use with your students when you're creating assignments or asking them what to do. So then as we're moving into that green color, it's called analyze, and you could have verbs like categorize and contrast, and then evaluate, and you can see higher level of critical thinking skills, and also more learner autonomy, where they get to choose what they want and create their own projects and have more ownership in their projects. So like defend and prioritize, and then finally create, like things like build and devise. And so there are also charts available on the internet you can search for with much more comprehensive lists of verbs for different uses, for writing, for visual, for spoken uses in the ESL classroom. And we think this is a really helpful tool, and we'll be referencing it throughout the presentation today.
So in our webinar, Dave and I explicitly advocate for development of visual literacies alongside English language teaching. As you can see, there are levels roughly mapped onto the separate levels. However, it is important to acknowledge that higher order visual literacy activities often require higher levels of English proficiency for students to express their ideas effectively. So for this reason, the intended visual literacy output of some students must be carefully aligned with the L2 English language abilities. And if you're interested in exploring this more, we'll show you a chart later on in the presentation.
So you may be wondering, why should we use photography? Well, some of you are just getting up, the people in the US, but we're in the Middle East, and so we've been up for a while. And if you're in the further east in the world, maybe Korea, Japan, or China, maybe you've been up all day long, and maybe this is your evening time. And so we've all been around images all day long. We've been in images with all sorts of the media that we create, that we observe. And so everybody everywhere is dealing with images all the time. And so that means that there's a low barrier and high engagement. And so we want to help build visual literacy and support language development. And of course, then we're using photography to bridge everyday experience and academic language use. As Suntag mentioned some time ago, when you create photographs, it's not just a physical activity. You are making judgments. You're making judgments about the world. And when you show off photographs of your own, people can have some idea of how you see the world. Do you see the world through a positive lens or a negative lens? And interestingly enough, so these quotes are from 1977. And if you think back what was going on technologically back in 1977, this was photography with film. And these days and that took a lot of money to process and time to process. The equipment was a lot less user friendly. And so now we have the equipment that we have today is a lot more user friendly. And so that's even more true today with everybody being able to take photos. And you might say that that photography is even ubiquitous. because everyone's phone has a camera. So all this has changed quite dramatically. And interestingly enough, the abilities of our phones, if you haven't been taking photos for a long time, what we can do with our modern cameras is really quite amazing. Like even professional equipment from not that long ago couldn't take images as well as we do with our cameras today. And as a result,
And just a quick comment from Anton, just who's agreeing with you here. He says photography helps open the mind and help to be interactive with others during when you're taking photographs. So I thought that was a nice comment showing his agreement with you also.
Well, thank you,
Wanted to
Anton.
share that.
that is true, and photography helps us connect with others and connect with the world around us and understand what's going on. And you might even say that art and media have been democratized. Well, what does that mean? When it becomes more available to everybody. Conan, what do you think about the democratization of art?
Well, like you were saying before, when cameras were expensive and kind of an exclusive thing, that it was only the art of the elite or those who can afford it. And now with cameras built into all smartphones, everyone from that has a phone, from early children or adults can take pictures, and they're not punished for taking unlimited photos. They can take as many as they want to figure out, what they enjoy taking pictures of,
The price point is a lot lower, the cost is a lot lower, and so people can have more practice and get a lot better at it.
including your students.
And because photography, so we today we'll show you a few things how photographs can highlight U.S. cultural values and social issues. But of course, it doesn't have to be just about the U.S. Photography can show off your own the cultural values and social issues of your students and of the place where you live and are teaching. And because photography is personal and universal, that makes it a natural resource for language teaching. So I've given you a little bit of a justification for the inclusion of photography in English language teaching. And so now let's practice some activities to help develop the visual literacy and language skills.
Okay. So now some of you might be wondering, will you show us how to find photos on the internet? And yes, we will, but we'll do that a little later in the presentation. So in this part of the webinar, we'll take you through 2 activities that you can adapt to your own teaching context. These activities are designed to help students acquire the language needed to analyze photographs. Now, before we begin, take a moment to think about the following question. How is it helpful to understand photographs when discussing them with students? You can type in the chat, and Kate will share in just a moment. But Dave, what have you found?
So this is a little bit not exactly photographs, but literacy of the materials that we have. I was talking with my students today. There were some phrases that were used in the textbook, and they were British phrases. Well, I'm from the U.S. and we're not in a British area, and I was able to show the students how the fact that these particular kinds of phrases show that this book was published in the UK at a certain time, and it was published before COVID. Well, things happen. And so media literacy can really be helpful for understanding what's going on around us and not just what's there, but why is it there and what happened.
Okay, nice. Kate, what responses are coming from the audience?
Yeah, great question on how can understanding photos help teachers discuss them with students. So let's see, we have some great comments coming in. Let's see, the American Corner in Bartsch, nice to see you all, says images contain a lot of information. Wonderful. Mansoor says photography can help exchange cultural differences and similarities. Wonderful response. Michael says photographers are photographs are visual techniques, composition, lighting, perspective to convey cultural meaning. Wonderful. Lynn Pierre says we can get more topics to discuss. Let's see. Heidi says perspective and angle is important. It can teach visual literacy. Wonderful. And Maria Teresa says students can use their creativity, critical thinking, and also adapt their vocabulary to be used to describe the photo. And one more, Diana says it helps develop critical thinking by interpreting visual and transferring meaning. Wonderful responses, everybody. Thank
Very good
you.
answers. Thank you. All right, so Dave and I are experienced photographers, and we have had decades to develop our photographic vocabulary. However, your students, and possibly some of you, may not have acquired this jargon yet. A useful starting point is understanding the game being played. So if you look at these two photos, they may appear similar at first. However, when you look closely, you will notice two different games being played. Someone who notices details can get hints about what's going on. Dave, what do you see going on?
So the picture on the right, the man in the red, I'm from the US, and my friends and family back in the US are very interested in American football. And so I very easily recognize the sorts of outfits, the padding, the helmets, the uniforms of the people on the man in the red. That tells me that that's an American football going on. I see the picture, the other picture, the black and white one, and I see it has uh, different padding, different uniforms, and quite frankly, I'm not very familiar with it. And so that tells me that there's different games going on.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. In sports, there are different games with different rules. And when students have increased vocabulary and understanding, they can increase the language use and deepen the analysis they do. This moves them further up Bloom's taxonomy pyramid. Now, photography has different games, but we call it genres. A genre is a category within a medium. So think about film, think about music, think about art. Um, on the screen, you can see 5 sample photographic genres: advertising, journalism, portraiture, fashion, and wildlife. Most of you have likely been exposed to these genres throughout your lives and may already have an intuitive sense of how they work. There are different rules that apply to each genre and cause them to function the way they do. Now, we're going to participate in an activity called Guess the Genre. Here you can see the activity objectives and teacher preparation. Please scan, and then here are the instructions. Okay. We'll have similar objectives, preparations, and instructions for all the activities we mentioned, so you can easily come back and check the PDF of the presentation later. Okay, so now we're going to play Guess the Genre. On the screen, there are 3 photographic genres and 3 photo images. I'm going to ask you to type the number in the chat that corresponds with the image, and you will do this for all 3 images. Okay, so match the number with the letter that you think that is the genre being represented. Okay, please begin.
All right, and as we're waiting for your responses, everyone, you can tell us A is for 1, 2, or 3, B is for 1, 2, or 3, C is for 1, 2, or 3, looking at those photos and genres. We have some nice comments as well. From Priya, she said, from Hari Priya, she says, once teachers have a clear understanding of a photo, they can verbally express the essence of the image artistically and metaphorically while encouraging creative storytelling. What a wonderful comment as we get started here on our activity. All right, so let's see here. Philomena says that journalism number 1 is connected to letter C. Portrait number 2 is connected to letter A, and 3 is connected to advertisement, that letter B. Wonderful. Let's see what other responses are coming in here. A lot of people saying that. Okay, I see one person's, Jacob says A is for journalism. Isu says journalism is connected to letter C. A lot of people seem to think that number 3, advertisement, is connected to that middle photo for letter B. Let's see. Carlos says we have advertisement B, portrait A, and journalism C. Maria Teresa says C is journalism, B is advertisement, and A is portrait. So lots of wonderful responses coming in. How did they do, Conan and David?
Well, let's go over the answers now. So let's look at the first one. And the first one, if you typed in C, you are correct. This is an example of journalism. Now, journalism typically records in a real event or situation. It's not necessarily beautiful or artistic, but there are some aesthetics to it. And it may be difficult to understand without the background information. So we see people gathered here, and we might not necessarily know the context. The next one, advertisement, is B. Okay, and it promotes a product. It shows a lifestyle or feeling connected to the product, and it's often idealized and not fully realistic. Oftentimes, advertisement gets accused of using photoshopping too much to enhance the qualities and the things going on in the image. And the last one is the portrait, A. Okay. Now, Dave, I thought a portrait typically was of someone's face.
Often, obviously, that is the case, but sometimes portraiture can be of other parts of the body. In this case, the woman's hands. So you can learn about the person from other things, not just the face. So in this case, the hand, it looks like she's quite old, and she's wearing a certain kind of dress, a certain kind of fabric. And so if someone was knowledgeable about fashion or textiles, fabrics, maybe they could provide some insight about where the person is from or what time she was from.
Okay, thank you. So good job, everyone.
You may be wondering, why should we use why do we worry about genres in the classroom? As we've been talking, it helps build awareness of different kinds of photos, and it's the beginning to help with visual literacy skills. We're talking critical thinking, and then of course it's actually using language in a meaningful way.
Okay. So here we have a deeper dive if you're interested in considering teaching students about other photographic genres. You know, different genres require different combinations of skills and equipment. And teachers can allow students freedom to choose the projects based on maybe what they want to show or focus on. Then students can use their language skills to explain how the students shot their genre-specific images and describe what they were hoping to achieve. Now, type in the chat which genre you think you could introduce in your first classes. And while we're waiting for answers from all of you, you might be surprised when you and your students dive into some of the advanced options in your phone's camera apps. That, you know, things like macro, zoom, night shots, these are things that you can do with, you know, the built-in features. All right.
And so don't be afraid to experiment. You know, obviously it's cheap to try out photos with the different things, and you'll be surprised at what you can achieve with the equipment that you already have in your own phone.
Okay. So, Kate, what are people saying? What are the genres they'd like to explore?
Yeah, we have some great comments about the genres and just about this topic in general. Let's see. People are saying a genre they could introduce first would be fashion,
Ooh.
advertisement, landscape. Lyudmila says landscape as well. Finn says, let's see, we have sports, food, portrait, food travel. That sounds like something that everybody would love. Advertisements, fine art, sports, events. Wonderful. Let's see here. And documentary because it's connected to reality from Victoria, travel from Mohammed, and sports because kids like playing sports from Babakar. Wonderful. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
So we've been giving a little bit of an overview of different kinds of photography. And just like when you have in a sport, it's not just the sport itself. There are specific plays that happen, the specific types of actions that happen under certain circumstances. And so you need to understand the rules of the game. And so, you may be wondering, well, why should we worry about photographic techniques? That's too technical. I don't know about this. Why should I spend time on this? So we'd like you to think for a moment, how does understanding how an image is constructed change how students interpret it? So go ahead and type in the chat if you have some thoughts about that.
Yeah, great question. Let us know, everybody. How do you think understanding how an image is constructed, excuse me, change how students interpret it? So how is that deeper understanding going to help your students with their interpretation of it? What do you think, everybody? Let's see here. It taps into our students' imagination and critical thinking. Absolutely, Victoria. Wonderful. Let's see, what else do you have for us? How does understanding how an image is constructed change how students interpret it? Different perspectives bring different interpretation from Andrew. Heidi says we could tie the genre into the topic or unit of the week if we have a particular curriculum to follow by our institutions. Wonderful.
Great idea.
Students can change some new words with the images. Great. Mona Lisa says it triggers critical thinking and helps understand the context. And Michael says photographers intentionally use framing, angles, light, and focus to guide viewers' attention and evoke emotion. And I'll do one more from Duranga. First on what they can actually see or perceive, and then what could be inside or behind the picture so they can do a deeper dive. Wonderful. Thanks, everybody.
And so it does take time to teach the vocabulary and information. But however, if the person has better vocabulary and understanding, then they can more clearly describe what they do or don't like and for what reasons, and what about the photograph actually helps send off that image, send off that meaning. So what do photographic texts do? They guide what we notice, what we look at longer, and how we understand an image, and then provides students with vocabulary and tools to explain their ideas, and then helps with critical thinking. So we're going to talk about a couple specific photographic techniques to start off with, and we've selected three fairly common ones. They're negative space, leading lines, and framing. So let's talk about negative space first. So negative space is the empty space that's in an image, perhaps around it or in the middle of it. So in this image, we've got the coffee cup, and we can see that the blue on the screen represents the part that's not there, and the contrast between the black of the black space. Is it on a table? Is it, obviously it's not magically floating in the air or something, but it provides an interesting focus on the coffee cup in the middle. And then if you look in the coffee cup, well, why it is a coffee cup, but why is there no coffee in it? No, nothing to drink. What does that mean? So the negative space helps draw our attention in. Next, we'll look at leading lines. So leading lines lead our eyes to somewhere in the photo. And so we've got the trees leading back in toward the distance. And there's a dog there, and maybe he wants to be our guide, leading us back into the snowy wilderness. And so it helps us understand, it helps lead our eyes places. And then finally, we'll talk about framing. And just like you often have a physical frame around a photo, then we also can have parts of the image, in this case, the lighter brown parts, and then they draw our image toward the middle, draw our eyes toward the middle of the image, further up the tree, maybe some kind of a palm tree, and the greener part, and we're kind of drawn into the center of the photo.
Okay. So now that Dave has taught us about different techniques, we're going to demonstrate a new activity called Spot the Technique activity. Here are the objectives and the preparations, and they're very similar to the Guess the Genre activity. And if you look at the next slide, you'll see the instructions, and they're pretty basic. So this is something, with a LCD projector and a PowerPoint that you could set up. So for this activity, Kate is going to participate in the Spot the Technique activity. Kate, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So you're going to look at this image, and then I'm going to highlight different parts of the image with a number. And you're going to tell me what technique you see on the screen. Are you ready?
Yep, sounds good.
All right. So look at the first line here. Okay. What technique do you think is being shown?
Let's see. Framing, leading lines, or negative space. I think I'm going to go with leading lines for this one.
Okay. And Dave, is she correct?
That's right.
Nice job, Kate. 1 for 3.
Thanks.
All right. Let's look at the next one. All right. So what area do you think the number 2 represents?
Let's see. I think because it's sort of a dark space, I'm going to go with negative space, letter C. Is that correct?
That is correct. Nice job.
Woohoo.
All right. So you can put on the number 3 now. And what do you think the 3 represents?
I'm going to go with my last option, framing. Is
Okay.
that correct?
That is correct, Kate. You sound like you're an advanced photographer.
I wouldn't say that, but you guys are helping me understand this a little bit better.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope that everyone was able to follow along and maybe think about how they could use this activity in the class to introduce these concepts.
And of course, these are not the only three techniques. There are lots and lots of different techniques that you can do a deeper dive on, additional photographic techniques. If you look on the shell photo on the right side, and there's an overlay, kind of an interesting looking overlay, you might have seen this, and it's called, one of the names is the Fibonacci sequence. Another name is the golden ratio. And if you start looking around in nature, this series of ratios is all over the place. And then in the lower right-hand side, we've got the fish surrounded by the sea anemones, and it has the overlay of the 3 by 3 grid, and that's called the rule of thirds. And oftentimes it's helpful to try to have the main subject of your photo in one of the boxes, of the 3 by 3 grid. Obviously in the middle, like the fish is in this one, is very common, but you can also have some more interesting things going on in your photo by moving to one of the different grids of the squares, and obviously lots. So yeah, and so which ones are you familiar with? Type your answer into the chat, please. Which techniques are you familiar with? And of course, in lots of photos, while we're waiting for some comments to come in, photos are very frequently or maybe always a combination of techniques. And so, for example, with the photo of the fish, we have filling the screen and we have contrast and some textures going on. So again, what techniques are you familiar with?
Wonderful. Yeah, we have a lot of great comments coming in. One person who says, back from the previous activity, looking at that first image that I guessed the technique, she kind of mentions how sometimes you can use more than one technique, or one technique sort of blends into another technique. So she was saying negative space sort of also frames the image. So that's one interesting comment that she mentioned there. Let's see. Mansoor just says, you guys are making us become better photographers. Mark says, understanding how an image is constructed helps students think critically and interpret it more deeply. Wonderful. Let's see. Finn says layers and viewpoint he's familiar with. Balance. The rest of these are fascinating from Philomena, so maybe not as familiar. Let's see. What other techniques are you familiar with? Background from Noah, fill the frame. Heidi says I use these, but a bit unconsciously. Interesting. Contrast, background and layers, landscape, symmetry. Rule of thirds is a great way to capture the key subject within the box of grids, especially for beginners in photography. Great.
Okay.
And one other person says background, contrast, layers, and frame. But this webinar is eye-opening, so she's learning a lot from you.
Well,
So
thank you,
that's it.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
That's really nice to hear.
And of course, as one of the commenters said, it's nice when we realize there are things that we already know and we're already doing. And so getting vocabulary for that, and then, oh, now I know what's going on. Now I know why it works the way it does. And that's what we're trying to do today. So we've been focusing on the more technical side of things today, but now we're going to move on into some more formal language practice activities. And we want to show you how photographs can support structured language practice and move from observation and description to narration and interpretation, referencing back to the Bloom's taxonomy that we mentioned earlier. So to start off, we have an activity that we call the time travel activity. And so we've got the objectives and the preparation on the screen with you. Take just 1 second for you to take a look at that. And of course, you can come back and look at this later if we're moving a little bit fast for you. Then, of course, we have the activity itself, the actual instructions. So the teacher puts 2 photos from the same place from different time periods in front of students, and then, pairing up students who are roughly the same level. And then the students look at the pictures and compare them, and then they can The output can be either written or verbal, depending on your situation, depending on what's going on. So let's do this. And so we thought for this one, perhaps Kate and Conan could do this. So we've got two photos. So Conan and Kate, what do you see? And in this case, perhaps think of yourselves as being intermediate level students.
Okay. Kate, why don't you go first?
Yeah, let's see. I see the images look similar in that they look like they're both cities or big towns. But they look very different because one seems to be older based on the coloring, the black and white or the gray coloring, and the other one looks to be more modern because of all the colors and technology shown in the photo. So those are some of my observations.
Okay. Kate, I agree. Um, I see in the old picture, it looks like the sign is maybe painted or produced by hand, whereas in the second picture, I see a lot of LCD advertisement. It's more colorful and they use more visuals, whereas in the first one, I see more pictures.
So based on what you guys can see of the photos and making some guesses, what part of a city would this be in? Would this be kind of in the heart of the city? Would the older part? Would it be the newer part of the city? What do you think you would find these locations like this?
Kate, what do you think?
It looks to me to be right sort of in the heart of the city in both photos, just in different times. But yeah, it looks to be like the heart or the downtown or sort of the center, busiest part of the city. How about you, Conan? What do you
I've
think?
heard of a place called Times Square, and I wonder if the
Hmm.
second picture is of Times Square. And I wonder if the first one is Times Square but older, because I look at the building and I see fire escapes, and I'm thinking people must live in those buildings because they need those in case there's a fire.
Yeah,
So,
good point.
what do you think? What do you think changed over time? If you had to make a guess, we don't know exactly where these are necessarily, but if you had to take a guess, what changed over time? Maybe in terms of economics, in terms of technology, and the way people live. What are some things that you think? What are some changes that occurred in these photos?
Hmm. Kate, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, well, definitely technology changed a lot between the first and second photos. You can see, like you said, all the LCD images in that second image. It also seems like maybe um, activities changed.
Hmm.
People might have been walking a lot more in the past from place to place. Um, I can't see very clearly any other forms of transportation, but and in the more modern one, it looks like people are in taxis or cars more.
Mhm. Okay.
So those are some things I noticed.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, if this is Manhattan, then, it's a very expensive place to build. Or live, and that's why they build more skyscrapers because people want to work and live there. So I think over time, maybe things got more expensive for people. And
So as we move on, so the if you were paying attention, the first kind of items that Conan and Kate were describing were kind of on a bit on the lower level side. They were describing what they could see. They were remembering and understanding, and they were doing comparison. This one is like this, and this one is like that, and it was kind of adjective based vocabulary development. And so we have an example for you of maybe what written output might look like. For one, the photos show a city street. They're both busy, older, new one, newer, and so on and so forth. And then as we moved on, and I was asking some questions of Conan and Kate, and we can see how they were doing a little bit of analyzing and applying. I was trying to use a few guiding questions with them. And so then we could talk about economics, technology, urban planning, and history. And so then the students can comment and provide additional perspectives. And then if you wanted to do this activity with upper level students, then you could, oh, I'm sorry. And here's the written example. I forgot to do that one. The written example. And then finally, as we move on, then we have kind of the upper level. Students could engage critically with images, perhaps develop their own photo series instead of having the images from the teacher, creating their own photos and then having to justify why they included the photos and what was different. They could have a multimodal approach, perhaps video, still images, posters, essay, and of course, we're talking more learner autonomy going on there.
Okay, so here on the screen, there is a heuristic in case you have higher level students. So the next screen, okay, and this is a deeper dive. This is 3 dimensions of viewing. And so this would help your students with more language abilities to look more critically at the photos. For example, how does the image make you feel? What can you see in the foreground and background? And what message does the image transmit? And so this is a good tool for getting people, even ourselves, to engage with the images more deeply.
And we mentioned earlier that we would give you a chart about visual literacy, and so this is what we said we'd provide for you.
Okay, so moving on, we don't have time to play this game, but this is a game we wanted to share, and this is called the iconic image game. And so on the screen, you can see the objectives and the preparation. And if we move on, here's how you start the game. So the teacher will choose an iconic image. And for this one, I've chosen the Statue of Liberty, something that is probably well known around the world. Okay. And now what the students have to do is they have to find an image that relates to the Statue of Liberty. So can we get the next instructions up? Okay. So in this case, the student chose this sports photograph. And they find an image that connected, and is original, but yet distinct. And so they have to explain or defend their choice. And this could be done in a written fashion or a verbal fashion. And the extension, it'd be find one more photo to complete the series. So if we look at the next screen, okay, this is the 3rd image. So Dave, how are the 3 images related?
So obviously, it's something reaching toward the sky, the torch on the Statue of Liberty, and then the basketball, and then we've got the stairs going up. And when we're doing rehearsal on this, I thought, oh well, the stairs, people can go up and go down, and you could relate that into the idea of, so the Statue of Liberty in the U.S. is at a major port of entry, and so many people came to the U.S. and so I said, well, maybe there were some social components going on. And Conan said, I didn't think about that at all. I just thought it was something going up. And so when you do an activity like this with your students, you may be surprised at the connections that they make.
Yeah, so thank you. All right, and we're going to show you one more activity that you can use. This is called the visual jigsaw activity. So on the screen here are the objectives and the preparations. Now, if we look at the next screen, this is how the activity would run. Okay, you would choose an image, and that you'd need students to work in pairs. One person would be the describer. The other one, you would have to give some paper and a drawing utensil to. They'd be the sketcher. Now, the describer would look at the image and not show their partner, and they would have to describe the image and tell the partner what they see. The sketcher would then be responsible for trying to create a depiction of what is being described. And they can draw, they can ask questions, but the whole purpose is to facilitate this through language. Okay, so that's another idea.
So now we're coming into the home stretch of our webinar. Thanks for spending time with us today, whether it's morning, noon, or night for you. And so we're going to show you how you can adapt to different contexts. So as we move on, we're going to show you different contexts and kind of the technical, how to make it all work part of the session. So before we get going, what do you think you need to do to adapt these activities and ideas to your own context? So think for a second and type, and if you'd like to chat, but just think for yourself. We want this to be practical for you. We want this to be something that you can take away. And if you have class tomorrow, then you can potentially do some of these, one or more of these activities right away, or certainly maybe early next week without hopefully too much preparation.
Yeah, Vicky says another extension. She was talking about those 3 photos that you were showing. She was commenting before of the Statue of Liberty, etc. She said another extension could be for students to write a story about one of the photos. So that's a great idea to adapt it for your context. And the time travel activity, Heidi says that she's used that type of activity to teach lower level students about comparisons. So that's a great way to use it. Let's see here. How else might you adapt today's ideas and activities for your own context? One thought I had was you could do like maybe a scavenger hunt, or just ask your students to take photos around your building, around your school building, using one of the techniques you shared. And they could do like a gallery of all the ways that they took photos using the rule of thirds or something like that.
Wow.
Let's see. Global, they could Mona Lisa says that this is a global thought weaved into a local context. Wonderful.
Okay.
And Noah says, choose a topic and decide on the skill, what to practice, and start preparing accordingly. Absolutely. So these are all ways you can think about adapting. Let's see. I love the iconic activity, and I'm going to try that with my students. Wonderful.
Wonderful.
Just look for one more. Ask my student. A lot of people are saying ask your students to write about the photo. And one more from Letty. I would use pictures as a breaking the ice activity, because I believe that by sharing different points of view, you get to know people. Absolutely. Wonderful, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you may be asking yourself, well, where can I find lovely photos? We've had lots of photos in this presentation today, and we've been able to find some on these websites, Pexels, Pixabay, and Unsplash. And so in terms of comparing all three, Pexels has nice photos and videos. It does have a better filter function than Unsplash does. And if you're familiar with the editing platform called Canva, you can do basic editing in Canva. Pixabay has some nice photos, illustrations, vectors, and other media. And so we mentioned along the way of possibly using multimedia with students, having them find stuff. These can be not just photos, but other media as well. And Unsplash has some nice photos and illustrations. And of course, every website needs to try to make money. And so unfortunately, we found that sometimes the best photos were the ones we needed to pay for. But at the same time, we were able to find some good photos from these along the way.
Okay.
Also, Unsplash, we found, had an interesting thing where they have official relationships with different U.S. institutions, and you can explore some of those. The New York Public Library, Art Institute of Chicago, and Cleveland Museum of Art, and some others. But not only that, they do have some official relationships with other institutions around the world. On the next page, some other institutions around the world. Conan, you were interested by the New Zealand one.
Yes, I thought that the photos there were very old. They were daguerreotype or sepia tone, and I just liked the old archival quality of them all.
There were some listed on the Europeana site.
Okay. All right. So now we need to talk about adapting, and there are for your different situations. And you might teach in a high resource context. This is where the classroom and the students have access to computers and smartphones, as well as maybe a monitor, an LCD projector, and more importantly, there is Wi-Fi or internet access. It's quite reliable. In this context, students are able to take photographs using their phones, like some of you have suggested, edit them, and they can also search online for images using the resources that we've shared. Images can be displayed using the classroom projector, and it's even possible to share images through an online gallery, such as a website or shared folder.
However, not all of you might be in a high resource context. You might be in what you might call a medium resource context. Maybe you do have a projector. There may be internet, but it might not be suitable for you to have all of the students sharing their images or accessing the internet. That can be a bit of a challenge. And so perhaps you as the teacher could load images onto your laptop or your computer, or at a time and place where you have more access to the internet, higher bandwidth. Perhaps you might need to print photos and laminate them for use, possibly post them on the wall or have them in stations around the room.
Okay. And maybe some of you are teaching in a context that would be considered a low resource context. And this is where there's not reliable or even existent technology and Wi-Fi. And so in these contexts, you can utilize old magazines, newspapers, calendars, postcards as sources of images. Printed photographs can be reused and repurposed for multiple activities, across different lessons. In addition, you might reach out to, corporate or NGO partners for assistance with donating printed materials or visual resources for educational use.
There are a few things that you should keep in mind as you're using photos. You do need to choose relevant and culturally appropriate images. In our context here in the Middle East, we definitely need to keep that in mind. And in some cases, you might want to show people or situations that are just like your students, because we all like to see people who are like us. But at the same time, sometimes it's nice to see people who are different and kind of get a different perspective there. And you can cover or blur sensitive images, or of course, use your crop tool so that's not a concern. Another thing you might think about on the next page is you need to teach in model ethical use. We talk about plagiarism in writing. We don't want to steal other people's work, and we shouldn't do that with images either. And so, for example, if you're able to download this presentation later, the PowerPoint version, you'll see that on every single page we have the attribution from where we got the image. In this particular case, this photo we got from Unsplash, and so that's just something that you can teach and model with your students. And then finally, people might be wondering, well, what about AI? And that's the thing that we're all thinking about. Conan, how often do you use AI for images?
Well, I use AI every day for my own use, but I also use it to generate images. Sometimes for the context that I want, because I can't find something on Unsplash. However, sometimes I try to use images that are more illustrative versus realistic, because I want to make sure that it's not misrepresenting things and students think that that's reality.
So AI is obviously a very powerful tool, and it's becoming increasingly easier. But at the same time, some people in the artistic community are worried that AI is stealing their work. And then also, you need to be worried that you need to be concerned about personal data entering the public space. Corporate companies are learning that this can be actually a very important legal issue. And then, of course, we need to be worried about using images without consent, for example, with minors. That's something to keep in mind. We don't want those images getting out there where they can be misused later on.
Okay. So this brings us to the end of the webinar. We hope the ideas that we shared today have been useful. Thank you all so much for your participation and your welcomed contributions. As we wrap up our webinar, take a moment to type in the chat one idea from today that you would like to explore more deeply after this lesson. Dave and I hope you continue your explorations of photography and visual literacy, and consider how it can support and enrich English language teaching. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Kate, was there anything in the presentation that particularly surprised you or got you thinking in a way that you didn't expect?
I think that some of those techniques that you shared with all of us, and how that can help students really develop critical thinking and analysis skills, that whole concept really kind of got me thinking. So I really liked that idea.
As with lots of particular skills, things look easy, and experts make things look easy. That's in a way how we know they're experts, right? And once you get into something, you realize, wait a second, there's a lot more going on, a lot more technique. It's a lot more difficult to get things to seem easy.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can really be an amazing way for students to develop language skills as well as they dive deeper into this skill of photography.
And they may learn that this is something that they want to pursue more formally on their own. This could be a nice hobby for them.
Yes, definitely. I wish I could see all the photos that might be generated after this webinar, because I think a lot of people have been inspired to take more photos and share them with their students. So we have some wonderful final comments coming in from our participants on these notes. Hari Priya says, as a photography student myself, this session has greatly enhanced my knowledge as it relates to English language and how they act as a medium towards creative expression and critical thinking. That's wonderful. Brad says, it's a great idea to use images for teaching culture. Christiane says technology can help so much nowadays to share pictures with students. And Maria Teresa says, I think that using photos in a classroom is really positive to share culture, customs, differences in countries. Students need to get out of technology for a few minutes and also use authentic material. And many, many people saying, great webinar. Thank you for this webinar. Very engaging. Thank you for sharing the great strategies. Loved each and every activity you shared from Zomaya. I will adapt these activities to my context by using famous Guatemalan landmarks, iconic places, and well-known people from the country. What a great comment.
Yeah, nice
Thank
job.
you.
All right. And one more from the American Corner in Bauchi. Thank you. This program is an eye-opener to the use of image and photos to engage students. Thanks to everyone who's watching from that American Corner and other American corners around the world.
And then as
All
we
right.
finish out, we have just one more page where we have the resources. So if you're interested in learning more, you can take a peek and learn more about these topics.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. We've enjoyed being with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Conan and David, for sharing these wonderful adaptable photo-based activities that bring language to life through visual storytelling. And as always, we'd like to thank you, our audience, for your engagement and participation today. Please continue to share your ideas through social media or with your viewing groups after the session ends. And now, what some of you have been waiting for, you have an opportunity to receive a digital badge from our team here at American English for Educators. Registered participants can complete the quiz in Canvas now. You must answer 2 out of 3 multiple choice questions correctly. Your eligibility to receive a digital badge is based on your first quiz submission score. So please take your time and make sure that you read each question carefully before you submit your quiz. If you successfully pass the quiz on your first attempt, you will get a badge immediately in Canvas. If you have not yet registered for Series 24, use the link being shared to register. Remember to register for the series only one time. Once you complete the registration process, you will gain access to the Canvas course and you can complete your attendance quiz. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. We hope to see you on March 18th for our next AE Live webinar. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the American English YouTube channel and turn on notifications to receive alerts for when we go live. And before we go, we want to remind everyone that before our next webinar, daylight savings time will start in the United States, which that will occur on March 8th. That means that the remaining webinars in Series 24 may have a different start time in your local area. Please use the time converter link being shared in by the moderator to confirm your local time, and be sure to enter the webinar date when using the converter tool. So thanks again for your participation. It's wonderful to be here with you all today, and we hope to see you at our next webinar on March 18th. Bye-bye, everybody.